45, we'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the May 29th minutes. Is there a motion on the floor to accept those? Member Duncan, Member Rosenbaum. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next is the informational items. We'll receive and file those except for the strategic plan update, which I'll turn over to Scott, unless there's questions on the other ones.
All right, let me get my packet open here, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, so this committee has oversight of 8 of the 17 strategic plan action items. This is the quarterly report for quarter 2, starts on page 29 in your packet. Just real quickly for those 9 items, high-level summary. So number 1 is American Rescue Plan Act prioritization. What we're doing now is we're taking the information and the policy that you gave us when the board had their policy discussion and then putting that into action. Number 2, strategic plan accountability. That is complete, and we're at a point now where we're in report mode, such as the example that the report that I'm giving here, and I've been giving at committees both yesterday and today. Number 9, is our DEI plan. A couple of quick highlights there. Under talent attraction and retention, we developed 4 trainings and pushed those out to our workforce as it relates to purchasing and procurement. The finance department and the DEI office and administration have been working on a W-9 project where we've asked every single one of our vendors to come back and give us a brand new W-9. We have all those back now. It's been a pretty laborious task to then hand code all that data into our vendor database, which is what we're doing. At this point in time, once that's complete, we'll be able to have a good baseline of where we spend our money with minority, women, disadvantaged, and veteran-owned businesses. At the same time, CFO McCord and I have started to talk about making a comprehensive amendment to the purchasing ordinance. There's been not only goals in this action plan item to incorporate some DEI goals into the purchasing ordinance, but there's also been some changes in state statute that we need to address as well. Third, Andre and his team have identified and started to build relationships with up to 52 external partners. And then fourth, under external stakeholder engagement, there's a resolution later on the agenda that deals with a digital equity pilot project that's being funded with state grant dollars. Number 10 is the county's role in Peoria's downtown and what that strategy looks like. Chairman Dill and I have had a couple of conversations preliminarily, so we're working a little bit ahead because that's supposed to kick off in quarter 3. What will likely happen is he and I will probably sit down with the mayor and the city manager to better understand what their strategy is, and then we can build a team as we've done with most every project internally here to figure out where we plug in and complement the city's plans for downtown. Number 11 is our external communications strategy. This is supposed to kick off in Q3 of this year as well, and so the communications team is also working a little bit ahead on this as it relates to podcasting and some other things. So just as a quick aside, as it relates to the podcasting component, if you walk by Gretchen's office, you'll see that her whiteboard is full of either ideas of either what we might call a recurring podcast or individual episode ideas. On the technology side, we actually prior had procured all of the tools and the equipment necessary to do podcasting. We just don't have a space to do that. If you remember from the Minister's Weekly Update a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to walk through Distillery Labs. And you should all have an invitation to the ribbon cutting, which will be next week at Distillery Labs. In Distillery Labs, there is a podcasting studio, but they did not have equipment. So I've talked to Doug Pruitt, who's the executive director at Distillery Labs. We're actually going to put our equipment in their studio. We will have access to it whenever we need it, and it has actually already been installed and has already been used. At 7 o'clock this morning, 3 members of the Brazilian delegation that are in town today and yesterday are in the region looking at ag tech and manufacturing. There's 3 members of that delegation that are podcasters in Brazil. Their reach is over 300,000 listeners. They recorded the very first podcast in the podcast studio this morning with our equipment, and I won't be able to understand it because I don't speak Portuguese. But know that over 300,000 Brazilians will be able to listen to a podcast that was recorded here with our equipment, talking about their experience, that delegation's experience here in Chicago and Central Illinois. Goal number 12 is community branding strategy. And here, again, this starts in the third quarter, so there's not a lot of activity. Odds are, though, we'd be looking to partner with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Goal number 13 is internal branding strategy. This is largely complete, where we've rebranded things on the intranet, our newsletter, and some other things, so that we're more in ongoing mode at this point. And then last but not least is goal number 16, which is the economic development strategy. That was supposed to kick off here in second quarter. Really all that's happened here is Chairman Dill and I have had a couple of conversations about identifying who might be part of that work group. We have identified a funding source and how we're going to pay for that strategy, and we have what looks like a sample RFP that we would either issue or we would potentially contract with Greater Peoria EDC to issue and manage. So that's the strategic plan update for the executive committee, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions about any one of those things or any of the other strategies and action plans that we have.
Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Administrator Sorrell. Move to the resolution of the Digital Equity Pilot Grant. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Member Blair, Member Allison. Floor is yours, Andre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of the Executive Committee. Always a pleasure to come before you all today. Specifically, we have a very exciting opportunity in front of us as I present our digital equity pilot, a resolution to our Executive Committee to accept and appropriate a grant from the state of Illinois in the amount of $125,000 to implement the digital equity pilot program. Just to go into a little background, I developed this idea based off conversations that you all were having this past year when it came to addressing the digital divide within Peoria County government, Peoria County. We know that the digital divide existed pre-pandemic, but it was really exacerbated during and post-pandemic. And so when Administrator Sorrell informed me that we received $125,000 per the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the state of Illinois, I started thinking about what ideas or what initiatives we can use this funds through a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is a issue that is a kitchen topic issue, regardless of race, religion, location, demographic, that affects all people through an aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion. And we know digital access is a kitchen table topic that affects so many in our community. So I came up with the idea, and I felt that it was appropriate as it aligned with goal number 9 of our 2023 strategic plan, which focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion under our external stakeholder engagement pillar there. This is an effort that is in collaboration with our Information and Technology Working Group of the Joint Commission on City and County Commission on Racial Justice and Equity, as well as other external stakeholders that I'm looking to collaborate with. We have reference data in both the Peoria County Equity GIS app, as well as the most recent survey that was sent out to our resident, or excuse me, our constituents regarding the Peoria County Broadband Survey, which has illustrated that we have affordability and accessibility issues within Peoria County. Our urban areas currently are having troubles with affordability, and our rural areas currently are having troubles with the accessibility because of lack of infrastructure. So for this particular pilot, though, we will be addressing the affordability of digital access. So again, this program it will be funded through the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We received this $125,000 allocation from State Representative Jahan Gordon Booth, with the goal of implementing this throughout all 18 districts over a 1-year period here within Peoria County. Our goal is to impact over 400 households within Peoria County. This is an estimate based off of some preliminary cost analysis that we received from one of the providers that we are considering utilizing for this pilot, and that is Comcast. I do want to point out that since our project narrative was submitted to DCCO, which we did submit that in early March of 2024, we didn't receive our full executed grant agreement into June 20th of 2024. I definitely have learned through this process that drafting and applying for a grant is very patient work, as anybody who has worked trying to achieve and obtain state awarded grants. And so our scope of work for the pilot has changed a little bit, but we do have some autonomy there talking to our assigned grant manager, and so we can make modifications. And so that may also include shifting the timeline of the grant, as well as the number of households that we'll ultimately serve. So looking at the implementation, this initiative aims to bridge the affordability gap by providing digital and broadband resources to eligible households within Peoria County. We're going to be looking at median household income. This is an eligibility determined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUB, to establish our guidelines. To ensure fairness, we're going to have a lottery system, so then that way, we can be as fair as possible to allow as many different people to have access to this opportunity. Members of the Joint Commission on Racial Justice and Equity Information Technology Group will help me review those applications as we go through the lottery system. The county will initially cover the expenses, and then we'll be reimbursed by DCCO once our mandatory monthly reports are submitted and approved by our assigned grant manager. I have a really good relationship with her. The broadband service providers, they're going to invoice us the costs free, but the goal is to have each participant in the pilot to have their own unique account. So I don't want a Jane Doe citizen calling me asking me to troubleshoot their internet provider. So they will have an actual account with Comcast or one of the providers that we'll utilize, so that way they can address that on the back end. But the county will be invoiced, and then we'll be reimbursed by the state of Illinois. I do want to also touch on our broadband service provider outreach. We are aware that Comcast, which is a leading provider in our area, they do not have the service necessary in some of our more rural parts of the county. And so I have made connections and have had some productive meetings with some providers in our rural areas, including Adams and Mid-Century Communications, and then Pearly Cable Construction. They're currently right now providing me with service maps as well as pricing, so that way we can, again, offer this to as many constituents within Peoria County, both in urban and rural Peoria County. And then I also have an email out for a meeting request with I3 Broadband. So some next action steps. We are looking to move pretty fast. As I said before, this has been a great learning experience. When you obtain a grant, sometimes it goes radio silent, and then you get word that it's time to go. And so we're moving fast, but I'm excited about the progress that we've made. My goal is to secure our service providers by Friday, August 8th. So whether that is a combination of Comcast, Mid-Century, and Pearly Construction and I3 Broadband, or two of the four, whatever works best, but the goal will be to secure that. And then we'll look to develop a community outreach strategy. And I'll be leaning on some of you all around this horseshoe. I want to know what are some areas within your respective districts that we should go to let our constituents know about this pilot project, whether that is back to school events, whether that's churches, libraries, things of that nature. We really want to get the word out so that way as many as our constituents within Peoria County could take advantage of this opportunity. And I would love to be able to start signing up residents as of August 26th. And again, once we start signing up residents, constituents, we'll be able to adjust our timeline with our grant manager, because we will probably go past, obviously, the current date that's reflected in our project narrative, which that is fine. And so we really are excited about this. I will state that sustainability is a priority of mine. But I feel pretty confident that we will be able to sustain this pilot in some form or fashion after the grant concludes. I've been a part of various webinars and phone calls with the Illinois Office of Broadband through DCCO. There is so much funding available at the federal and the state level. I actually have a meeting with their community management or community engagement manager. She's coming to Peoria next month because she's excited about our digital equity pilot. And so I feel that we will have a shovel-ready project, if you will, once additional funding comes down. We'll have a true proof of concept, so we'll be able to secure additional funding and ideally maybe take the pilot to the next level. So I'm very cognitive of making sure that we have sustainability efforts. I think that we will make sure, though, that our constituents that sign up for the pilot, that they are aware that this is a pilot program and to manage expectations. So we're not able to secure that external funding. And if this is not the will of the board to continue this, then the pilot will conclude at the duration of the grant cycle. So that concludes my brief overview of today. I would definitely appreciate your support on this. I think that this is a very great opportunity for our constituents within Peoria County to address a true basic need that we're seeing right now, and that is providing broadband service to our constituents. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Allen? Member Allison.
Is there a certain percentage of the funds that will be dedicated to the rural parts of the county?
No. So the goal is to have, as best we can, equal representation throughout all 18 districts. We know certain districts have the current infrastructure in place, so we may see more funding in certain areas just based off of existing infrastructure that is there, just being transparent with you. But the goal, again, trying to work with those other service providers that are out there in the rural communities, is to make sure that they have access to it as best we can. But again, we know that the challenging gap there is some of those rural areas just don't have the infrastructure, so they may not be able to participate in the pilot.
And have you worked with Kathy Brown on this?
Yes, so Kathy Brown actually, and Kathy Brown is with the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, was the one who gave me the context of some of those rural broadband service providers. She's actually also connected me with, I believe, the University of Illinois system. They've got some digital literacy courses that they're teaching, where if a constituent goes through that programming, they're actually able to get a voucher to get a desktop computer at the end of it. So we're looking to collaborate. Ideally, it would be great to have a community engagement opportunity at, let's say, a public library system. You sign up for our pilot, you sign up for one of the digital literacy programs, so that way you're able to get the skills needed to utilize the services, and at the end of it, you get a free device. So I think that would be a win-win. So I think there's going to be a lot of collaboration opportunities, but Kathy, she's been a great resource thus far.
One final question. So if the infrastructure isn't currently there, then they are not eligible?
They won't be eligible this time. And so what
then
we're...
most of our rural residents probably won't be eligible, because it's more focused for more of the city residents, is that right?
Well, I will say when I talk to the different providers, so for instance, when I talked to Mid-Century, they informed me they were in Hannah City, they were in some of the rural areas. And so we're going to do our best to try to service them. We really are. Going through this process too, though, we'll be able to collect that data and really state that, these are the gaps in our rural communities, some areas that we already know, but this could be information that we can share with these different providers of, we had finances to be able to support our residents, but the infrastructure is still lacking. And so we're going to do our best to be as fair and equitable to our urban and our rural communities, but we do know there will be challenges just because of existing infrastructure.
Member Duncan.
Yeah, Andre, is there a available format or application yet available to the communities to start signing them up, or are we still waiting on the lottery, or what's the procedure on that?
Not yet, Member Duncan. So once we solidify what service providers will be utilizing, then from there we'll be able to draft an application. So then that way we'll know what the price point will look like, because that will shift. Doing some preliminary analysis, broadband services are a little more expensive in our rural area, but again, that's just because of the existing infrastructure that is present or not present. And so once we get all that finalized, and again, my goal by August 8th is to have those service providers solidified, then from there we'll start drafting our applications, and then by the end of August, we'll be able to start pounding the pavement and getting people signed up.
Member Ricker.
I'll just make a few comments. So I've been an advocate for broadband all along. I've gone through this, and Mr. Allen and I have had some communication back and forth the last day on this topic. I guess I'm going to express some concerns I have as one board member. In a brief, we're subsidizing subscription services for households that have access today, and it's for up to 12 months once we get it approved. But it's a grant that's a pilot, it's a one-time, and Mr. Allen has spoke very clearly that we don't have a guarantee after the 12 months that we'll be able to subsidize it. The way the grant is written, the grant makes us the grantee. We as the county own the responsibility, and we're the interface to the internet companies, the Comcast and whoever. They'll send their bills to us for those approved subscribers. We will reimburse, so we'll have cost managed reimbursements every month back to the Comcast and i3s or whoever it is. But at the end of this, we don't have a line of sight, and I know in the many years I've been on the county board, we've been fairly reluctant to say, okay, set the expectation. We've subsidized you for 12 months or however many months of the window. After that, we don't have funds from the state. The decision will be on us. Do we put that in our budget and take that money out of our budget ongoing years? And I think that's a concern that I have. The other is there's a lot of federal money out there today to subsidize subscriptions, other methods, other vehicles. So while I commend that we're looking for opportunities, and I don't like to turn them down, this is one that I will vote against, only from the standpoint there's a lot more unanswered questions and more concern about setting false expectations for our citizens. What will change in the next 9 to 10 months that we quit funding them or subsidizing their subscriptions, and those people now have a connection back to us saying, hey, county, you need to subsidize my subscription. You got me started. What are you doing for the future? It'll be phone calls to each one of us in our own districts. What are you doing? We just need to be prepared. Are we willing to put out another 125, another 150 every year moving forward if we do not have grants? So I'm not comfortable at this point approving it, so I will be a no. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Ricker. And I do think to that point, and I understand the concern of that, but I think the board has shown historically through the health department and other things that once a grant is gone, we do not continue to subsidize it after that. And I do appreciate the email you sent this morning. I think Mr. Allen, with just messaging to make it very, very clear, which he stated would be part of the application of this is not a continuous program that we will continue after unless more grant funding came. So I understand the concerns and just needs to make sure that it's appropriately communicated, which I feel we will do. Member Williams?
Was there any consideration, because I think we made kind of a policy decision that we weren't going to do that. We were going to spend our ARPA dollars on infrastructure. So was there any thought given to using that $125,000 for infrastructure?
No. And that's because of the amount of the grant. We felt that it was a low hanging fruit to address affordability. Um, if we had the finances, I would love to address the infrastructure, especially in our rural areas where it's currently lacking. But we just felt based off of the current dollar amount that we could, for lack of better words, get a little more bang for our buck by just addressing the affordability versus the infrastructure.
Member Phelan.
I would say I appreciate the creativity and trying to come up with a solution here. A couple of questions I do have. One, this application process, and you might not know the answers to them quite yet, as this is still relatively new, but when that application goes live, what will be the routes of communicating that out to the public? And then question two would be, you mentioned a lottery system, but also an attempt to be fair across all districts. How do you anticipate that working with probably more requests coming from urban areas, although rural has just as many problems?
Yeah, definitely. So as far as the communication piece, we will collaborate with our marketing team here at the county, utilize our traditional methods of email, social media. We may be able to do a snail mailer, things of that nature, to really get the word out. Again, connecting with you all and go to those spaces and places where your constituents gather, whether that is places of worship, back to school events, things of that nature. When it comes to the selection process, and that's something that we're going to really have to figure out. I think a good problem to have is we have so many people that apply that we really have to use the lottery system. I think that's a good problem to have. And so we'll have to really look at it to see, especially once we have the actual service providers, that we're going to be able to see what areas we'll go into. And when we start looking at applications, we'll be able to say, this constituent is from District 12, this constituent is from District 8, this constituent is from District 6, and we can start keeping track before we notify those that they've been accepted, but we can start keeping track of where the representation from each district is, so that way we can try to be as fair and equitable as possible.
One more question. Does the grant allow, Steve brings up some really good points with administrative cost, managing this program, looking at applications, paying these bills. Does the grant allow us to recoup any administrative cost? Can any of those funds be applied to paying our staff to manage this?
So when we wrote the grant, we wrote it that this would be for service only. In my work plan for myself and Brittany, we included our digital equity pilot because we knew that this was on the forecast. So we are prepared to provide our staff time to execute this because this is part of our work plan for this year. I will say once we get them connected with the service provider, that's why that important piece that the constituent is going to have an actual account with the provider. I don't want to be fielding calls that your internet went out. I don't want Brittany to be fielding calls. And so once we get them onboarded with the service provider, I believe that from outside of a data collection standpoint, because we'll be administering some surveys and seeing how people are utilizing the services, whether it's for educational activities, maybe you were able to get a remote job that you wanted, or maybe you were able just to allow your kids to all use their iPads at the same time. So I see us more so doing that exercise once everybody gets onboarded, but this funding is specifically for the service.
Hopefully the last question here. If a user, you mentioned that we could potentially have the ability to see what traffic is going across that network. If there's traffic that creates some sort of a liability, is there any traffic that could create a liability issue to us if somebody was looking at content that might create a legal issue?
When you say traffic, are you talking about their activities once they have the service?
Correct.
That would be something that we could, and I would probably connect with our state's attorney's office. Maybe there's some verbiage that we need to put in the application, regarding, recommended uses of the broadband services that you connect to. Obviously, there will be some trust, I would hope that people are using it for the right reasons, but it is 2024. But there's some verbiage that we can put in there just to protect us in case someone was to do something that is frowned upon while they have access to the digital pilot. So that's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up, Member Phelan, and we can connect with our state's attorney's office to put some verbiage maybe in the application that ensures that we're protected.
Thank you.
Yep.
Member Ricker.
One more maybe ask would be to have a exit plan, or I'll say a termination. So if I'm subscriber one, I'm getting the assistance or subsidy from the county of Peoria of X dollars or X percent, or maybe my entire bill. When that 12 months or that window of time comes to the end and the county of Peoria said, we're not covering you starting June of 2025, how do we notify each of those 400 households, oh, by the way, in June of 2025, that's your last one, you get subsidy. If you want to keep the service, it's yours, but realize in July of 2025, you will pay the entire bill because our program, our grant was a limited time only. And if we're being, again, I get caught in the process behind the scenes because, okay, the Comcast of the world are subsidizing, they're reducing that customer's bill by X dollars or percent, and they're sending us that difference. We're writing checks to Comcast for 42 subscriptions or 400 or whatever. At some point, there's an exit that says when we walk away from it, I don't want our users or our subscribers using our support to say, hey, I got my July bill and it's full price. What happened? Oh, you didn't know, but we only funded it through June. So there's a lot of behind the scenes how-to that could, again, we may create more dissatisfaction than positive satisfaction.
Member Bryant.
I had a question about, are you aware of any, with the companies like Comcast that provide the service, that in certain areas, like 61603 and 05, have a limited or lower service? It's not that broadband, it's not that even if they could afford it, it's not even available. Is this to support that?
Again, this is to address the affordability. We know that there are going to be existing gaps in our urban and rural communities just because of lack of infrastructure. So that's not necessarily the purview of the pilot this time. But I think this exercise will allow us to collect that data that I'm sure our providers have. But I know that having conversations with providers, they'll say that there's certain service areas that are covered, but our constituents are telling us something different. And so I'm excited about going through the exercise to really collect that hard data to really demonstrate that. I know that you're saying that this area is covered, but these constituents are saying it's not, and we now have additional evidence of that. But again, this pilot is to address affordability in areas that currently have the infrastructure.
So do we know what, so I guess we're saying broadband, but if they're getting like a dial-up or like a satellite type of service, will we know what we're paying for?
Yeah, so if they reach out to us and apply to the pilot and say they may want to shift over, based off of, let's say, for instance, Comcast has a Internet Essentials program. And they may say the service that we're able to offer through the Internet Essentials program is better than what they currently have now. If they want to switch over and they meet the eligibility requirements, that's perfectly fine. One of the things that I stressed when I was meeting with the information technology group is we want to stress quality over quantity. We want people to have reliable quality broadband service. And so that may mean that we service less people to ensure that they have the quality experience that they need, versus having you sign up for the bare minimum just so that way we can, say that, yeah, we service all these households. But if you're still trying to pick and choose who can be on their laptops or who can be on their MacBooks or schools getting ready to start up, we don't want our constituents going through that.
Any other questions? Member Coates.
Just to make sure that I'm hearing you clearly, on two pieces here, the managing expectations. I don't know all the details, but I know there are programs out there, for example, like your utility bill. It's a one-time. opportunity for those folks. So I don't believe that it would be a surprise for people to hear that, oh, we're only going to pay for this for 12 months. And then they're shocked of what happens, and you'll be fielding all of those requests, because I do feel that there is a group of people who do understand that that's how these opportunities work. And then the second piece of that is, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear as well, is, you know, I do understand that the infrastructure is a big deal. And that's part of the problem, even from the urban and obviously from the rural standpoint. So when I'm looking at this as, you know, it doesn't hurt to be a community that, you know, this is something that needs to be done, and maybe this is just sort of laying the groundwork for opportunities in the future. You know, it is a small amount of money. It's not going to go that far. We can't go out here and start building infrastructure with $125,000, but it does set us as, look at what we've done, look at what we've done for our community, look at this additional information we've been able to gather, and then maybe that dollar amount comes from somewhere else to help foresee maybe those rural areas now can get some sort of program and service opportunities that's available for them as well. So I guess that was a combination of a comment, not necessarily a question, but just please, if there's anything I did say incorrectly, let me know. Thank you.
No, I mean, your comments were right on. You know, again, this would be an educational moment for some people who receive services like this, whether it's utility assistance, like you said, or others are familiar that, you know, there could be a shutoff at some point. And we just have to make sure that our communication is very clear. We could do a 90-day notice, a 60-day notice, as, you know, if we find out that we're not able to extend that, I think that's fine. And then as far as, you know, addressing infrastructure, I think based off of some of the contacts I'm now making with the Illinois Office of Broadband and others, maybe that will lead to this. You know, I think once we start getting in the door and we start having these contacts and we start learning about these additional funding opportunities, hopefully that does lead to some infrastructure implementation in some of our rural and urban areas that are currently lacking.
Thank you.
Member Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Chairman Dillon. One of my questions is, we have to pay for it up front, and then we get reimbursed when we turn in the paperwork from the DCO.
Yes.
Okay. What guarantee do we have that we're going to get reimbursed because we did the paperwork on time, right? And if it doesn't get done, who's going to pay for it then? I mean, what budget does it come out of? Because let's face it, the grant work, I've done a couple grants, and they're not easy. And you have to do it on time. You have to do it exactly the way they say to do it, which may not make sense, but that's the way the grants are. And if you want their money, you got to do it. What guarantee does the county board here has that, I take it you're going to be doing the, okay, what guarantee do we have that it's going to be done on time, properly, so we get reimbursed, and that now you're not coming to us and say, well, I screwed up. I'm not saying anything personal, but I just, this is a little scary for a new thing that you're going to come back and say, I screwed up, I had something come up, we didn't get it done, now we're on the hook for $30,000. You guys, you know, we got to take it out of the budget. The other part is, are we totally subsidizing it? Or are we going to have the people doing the lottery have some skin in the game? Would they pay half of it or something like that? Because if we the way it looked like you were going to do total subsidy, that's only 22 people per district, 22.22 per district to get your 400 people. If you have people that put a little bit of skin in the game, then we could service more people, which would maybe make it more appealing to more. Or all of us board members are going to get calls from all these people saying they didn't get picked and it's not fair and so forth. So it's better to talk about what might happen negatively up front before than address it later. We didn't think about it. So even though I like to look through rose-colored glasses, sometimes I get reminded I need to look through reality, and this is kind of the reality that I'm seeing it at.
Yeah,
Paul,
sure.
and I think, sorry not to interrupt you, Andre, but I think Administrator Sorrell can answer on the accountability portion of it.
So I'll let Chief DEI Officer Allen speak to kind of the second and third parts of your question, Mr. Rosenbaum. But the first part is you hold me accountable. That's what you pay me to do, and that's what I get paid to do. So, yep.
And I'll add to that, going through this experience, I'm pretty familiar with the grant process. We already had to provide a report. As soon as we got it, obviously we didn't have much in the report because we haven't done much, but it was approved, it was on time. So I can guarantee you we're not going to send the collection plate around the horseshoe because I didn't get the grant paperwork in on time. And then can you give me your second question again, sir?
Are we totally subsidizing each person's, or are we going to just partially subsidize it so we could spread the money through more constituents? And sometimes if people have a little skin in the game, they, you get better response out of them, people that just, the whole thing's free and they don't have to pay for anything. I was wondering which way you were looking at.
Yeah, so I would like to totally subsidize it. And I think because I really want to provide some relief to our constituents, and also too, I think that we can make sure that they have the services they need. But I think also though, once we get the service maps and the costs from the other providers, then we may have to go into a subsidized type of program, because if it's a more expensive based off of those other providers, then we may have to adjust our formula. And we do have that autonomy to do that. So once we get that information, then we can kind of decide if we want to go with a complete subsidized, or if we want to make sure that they have some skin in the game, as you put it, we can go that route. But from the jump, I would love to completely subsidize it though, because from what I'm seeing, affordability is a challenge for so many constituents.
Any other questions? I think we're at the point that we should vote on this, and we'll trust staff to implement the program, implement it well like they normally do. And this could be a very good one-year program, potentially leading into more. Is there any other questions? If not, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All ayes, one nay. Member Ricker.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is discussions. We'll do the standing committee agendas so that we can get the Hannah City Work Camp that I asked to be on here too. So with that, infrastructure, Member Salzer.
We only had one resolution. It has to do with the bridge out on Lancaster Road, as you've read about probably. There was an accident. A young lady hit the bridge, did some damage to it and so forth. It had been in pretty good shape because I asked Amy yesterday in our committee meeting what kind of a shape it was in, and she said it had, been pretty good shape, but it's not going to cost us anything because her insurance company is going to have to pay for it. We will upfront it with our bridge funds and so forth, and we awarded the contract to a responsible and lowest bidder, as we generally do, and that would be Stark from over in Bloomington, who has done a lot of work in this county. As a young person growing up, Stark never hit Peoria County much, but they really have expanded and done quite a bit of work for us. And the total cost of the bid was $129,444.50. I don't know how the guy ever figured 50 cents in there, but they did. Anyway, and the work will start as soon as we get it approved in a regular meeting. So the people out there in that limestone area, they'll be happy when it's finished.
Thanks, Member Salzer. And just FYI, Stark corporate office might be in Bloomington, but they have a huge operation yard here in Peoria County in the, I would consider it the Mossville Business Park by Cat Mossville. Pretty good sized property that they have over there.
Are they in that area where Hartman used to be? McDougal Hartman?
They're down by the soccer fields and Mossville Grade School.
No, they're away from that area.
Next up, Ways and Means, Member Duncan.
Yes, Ways and Means, we had one resolution for monthly delinquent taxes for the month of July 2024 with 2 items, and it was approved unanimously.
Thank you, Member Duncan. Land Use Member Rosenbaum was busy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we had a really busy day. We had 6 zoning cases and 1 subdivision waiver. The first zoning case was just adding on some parcels to Robertson Used Auto Parts down on right off on Wheeler Road off of 24 down by Caterpillar and the chemical plants in Mapleton. The next 3 was Paul Lopez. He had a resident that he wanted to take his house off of the building and make the building for his towing truck business commercial. And so we had 3 cases for that. Those everything passed, 1 dissent on them, on each one of them. And then the next one was one land split off of a farm. That one passed. And then we had a solar one that passed. And then the subdivision waiver was the land split. Had to do that for the water. They're going to be on well, not and the well was way above our requirements instead of being on city water. And had a few people come in and talk, and it took 45 minutes, a little bit longer meeting than normal.
Thank you, Member Rosenbaum. Questions? Next, Member Ricker, County Operations.
So for county operations, we had 3 resolutions. The first one was the Axon Digital Evidence Software for the Public Defender. And so that was joint with the Finance Audit Committee, and that was passed unanimously. The second one is the approval of the ordinance of a 1-year contract and bylaws to join the Intergovernmental Personal Benefits Cooperative to provide health insurance benefits. So a lot of words, but the key point here is the Operations Committee and the Health Insurance Advisory Committee have been working since February along with administration to come up with a solution and an offering for health care coverage, insurance coverage for the employees of the county. So a lot of work was put into it. The outcome of it, and we can provide a lot more detail, but the outcome of it was to move from a self-funded healthcare insurance program to going into a pool. The pool program provided some good benefits. It was one of our best cost alternatives for the employees and the county, and also it provided flexibility. Now the county employees will be able to choose their provider. So if they want to go to Carl or they want to go to OSF, any provider that's under the umbrella of this organization, they can pick and choose to get their healthcare services. And that was a key point in the surveys from our employees, that they wanted choice and ability. A lot more detail. Shauna did an awesome job presenting it earlier. I won't walk through it, but committee did approve that. I really appreciate the work that's done, and there's still a fair amount of work to be done before we go to open enrollment in October-ish time frame for all of the county employees to make a decision for enrolling in healthcare. The last piece, last resolution was a 5-year contract with Empower Health Services to provide wellness services. That was tied to the healthcare program. So one of the elements that we offer today is a wellness service for our employees. If it's blood testing, if it's just normal, a clinic type, we can set up times where they can do blood pressure and screenings and such, along with coaching, lifestyle coaching, a lot of elements. It's a very positive thing, and the members of the Health Insurance Advisory Committee, which are 20-some members that represented the county employees, I think it was very positive. We had several choices. We picked Empower, or they picked Empower as their preferred contract. So we put that up and we passed that resolution today. So both positive things, really to help improve the outcome for our employees, hopefully more cost-effective, better health care, and better lifestyle. That's all. Thanks.
Questions? Just want to give a big thank you to Shauna, Angela, their team, operations member Rickard, and all the members that have helped participate. That we really have the employees engaged, understanding the health plan, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, and it's been definitely noticed and appreciated. So thank you. Member Renault, Health.
Thank you. We had one resolution, and that was the Illinois Emergency Management Mutual Aid System intergovernmental agreement, and that essentially just gives the chairperson the authority to provide aid to maybe counties that are, or municipalities that are outside of the county.
Any questions? Thank you, Member Renault. Public Safety was canceled. Finance, Member Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had two resolutions. As Member Ricker mentioned, we had a joint resolution with operations on Axon Digital Evidence Software. That was approved unanimously. The second resolution was for Headington Oaks write-off. This is the final write-off of, it's about $1.5 million, and that was passed unanimously. I did want to, again, give a shout out to Heather McCord, our CFO, and her staff for all the work that they did. They put a lot of time and effort into really trying to collect those dollars, so we do appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Williams. Are questions? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion of the Haney City Work Camp. So I think Mr. Harding that came and spoke last month kind of probably sped this conversation up. We were planning on having it. I have not seen the slide deck, so hopefully I'm not stealing any topics. But
you'll be good. You're all good.
I did ask Administrator Sorrell to prepare history, rules, and regulations on there. This board's been really good at having some policy discussions, and we've just been sitting on this. I mean, some of us probably remember all sorts of different proposals that have been made to us back from when Mary Ardapple was going to turn it into an organic farm, we had a gentleman come speak about wanting to put goats and stuff on the property. But we have no long-term strategy that has been identified for this property. And I don't know that this board has been one to want to kick the can down the road. So I think it's important for us to identify a long-term strategy. And Scott will talk about some of those long-term strategies that we could take. And obviously, most of them involve some sort of money. But it's important that we come up, or at least start thinking about what the plan is. I don't know any of you that have driven by there. It is an eyesore. We do clean it up every once in a while, but you can definitely tell it's not maintained on a daily basis. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott, and then we can have some discussion over it.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Very short slide deck. Just to orient everyone, the red box is the work camp. It is on State Highway 116 west of Hanna City, so central part of the county. This is a more blown up view of the property. The red line is the parcel boundary. The red shaded area is an FAA radar dome, and the FAA owns that acreage. And then they have a permanent easement to cross the property to get to and from their property. And then the box that is shaded in yellow is a separate parcel that is owned by the Village of Hanna City, and that is how the property in general gets its public water supply. So when you take out the yellow shaded box and the red shaded box, there's roughly 36 acres remaining that is under our ownership. Here's a couple of, is a timeline. So in 1949, the property was developed as a training facility for the Air Force. In 1969, it was transferred from the Air Force to the state to be used by the Department of Corrections. The newest building on the property was constructed as a dormitory in 2001. In 2008, legislation that was sponsored by Representative Leach in the House and Senator Kaler on the Senate side resulted in Public Act 95-0982, and that transferred the property from the state to the county. It basically declared the property as surplus property to the state. At that point in time, Sheriff McCoy, I think, had plans to use it as some type of a public safety training facility. But at that point also, the property had been closed and abandoned by the Department of Corrections for some period of time. In 2012, we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers to remediate some petroleum-based contaminants near 2 of the buildings, one of which was the motor pool. In 2014, this board awarded a contract to remediate the asbestos from the 9 dwellings that were right along the front of the property on 116. We partnered with Logan Trevoli Fire Protection District, where they had a controlled burning for a training exercise for all the rural fire protection districts. And then post-burn, the remaining debris was demolished and properly disposed of. So the contract that the board awarded was for $252,000 to handle the remediation and then the post-burn debris removal. And then in 2018, Public Act 100-0633, which was sponsored by Senator Kaler in the Senate and Representative Eunice in the House, modified the original act that would allow us to sell the property free and clear if we had a developer interested, provided that 10% of the proceeds went back to the state of Illinois. Some options and other limitations that are available to the board for consideration. We could continue to own and maintain the property. It costs us roughly $15,000 to $20,000 a year to maintain it, and that almost entirely goes towards mowing. We could deed the property back to the state of Illinois. The hope there would be, Central Management Services, or CMS, would probably become the landlord for the state, and hopefully through the state budget process, they could actually obtain funds to remediate and demolish the remaining structures that are on the property. We could actively identify and seek out alternative funding sources to do that ourselves and maintain and keep ownership of the property. And then, regardless of which direction we go there, we could sell or, for fair market value or for $1, the property to a yet unidentified property owner or private owner. Some limitations that are in the legislation that deeded the property to us. No new construction within 2,000 feet of the radar dome with a building height, so the top of the roof would be at 780 feet above sea level. That means there could basically be a 1-story building constructed within 2,000 feet. No new construction within 1,000 feet of the radar dome that is a metal building, metal roof, or fence. And the last slide will show you what 1,000 feet looks like in relationship to the property. And because it's largely made of metal, solar and wind are not possible either. Solar specifically, we actually asked in the late teens, right before COVID, the FAA about that, and they said no to that. We're always happy to go back and ask them again, but we realistically don't think that answer is going to change. But we're happy to go back and ask the FAA to revisit the question. To put in perspective what 1,000 feet is from the radar dome, it's everything inside the blue circle. So that is everything except roughly 7/10 of an acre in the far southwest corner of the property. So that really means that if we were going to build buildings, and probably let's go back and look at this is probably the best view, all those buildings that are on the property, you can see the 9 dwellings are still in this picture. Those have since been demolished, but everything else has been abandoned for so long that it is not, they're not capable of being habited, they're not capable of being salvaged. They're filled with mold because when the Department of Corrections walked away, they didn't shut the water off, and that first winter when there was no heat, literally every pipe in every building broke. And so there's significant damage to every single building. Shortly after we gained ownership of the property, we had then Philip Swagger Associates, now Dewberry, do an analysis of each of the buildings and give us recommendations on what could be salvaged. At that point in time, the only building that could be salvaged is, let's see if I can, is this long narrow one here, which is the newest building on property. It's a cinder block building, but that was in 2008. So, 15 plus years later, it's decayed significantly more. The estimate to remediate and demolish the remaining buildings in circa 2008, 2009 was, $1.2, $1.3 million. And that would also include removal and remediation of the septic system and facility that's here on the east side of the property. So there's quite a bit of remediation and demolition work that would be needed to get it site ready, whether it be for development or whether you would want to try and sell it for farm ground. And that's the setup, Mr. Chairman.
Member Williams?
Is that building, the long one, is that the gym?
No, the gymnasium is this little L-shaped building here. That one, because it's actually open air, if the property is secure, but if you wanted to actually go walk through a building, that's probably the only one that I would feel safe walking through. But it is still, it's in an advanced state of decay as well.
It actually, when I was out there, I'm going to say 10 years ago, it seemed like it was in pretty good shape, the gymnasium. But, what we did at that point in time, it was Lynn Pearson and I went out with Sheriff McCoy at the time to talk about doing maybe a shooting range out there and some training. Again, what you mentioned earlier, but that gym seemed to be in fairly decent shape. So,
right. So Sheriff's Office over the course of time has done non-lethal weapon training, coming and going. I know Jason Marks has had, we've had some EMA training out there as well. Either outside on the grounds or in a couple of the buildings that are capable of having that training. There are some buildings, for example, this building here, and these two buildings here. When we took possession in 2008, the floors were so bad that they were structurally not safe to be in. That's when we took possession of the property.
Member Blair.
If we were to deed it back to the state, I think that was one of the options.
Yes.
Do they have to take it?
Yes, under Public Act 95-982, they do have to take it back. There is, in the short term, though, no guarantee that they will maintain it to the level, even to the level that we would be maintaining it, that have been maintaining it.
Member Ricker.
Just when we had the Public Act, and did we ask to have rights to this, or how did that come up? And then if we did we have some plans that board at that time said, here's 1 or 2 or 3 things that why we wanted the property? Just so we have a history.
Great question. Not to put Member Daley on the spot, but I believe if what the stories that I've been told are accurate, that this was a concept, an idea born from a conversation with then Representative Leach and then Sheriff McCoy. And then legislation, it flew through the General Assembly, passed both chambers unanimously in actually pretty short order. I was went back actually yesterday when the chairman asked me to put something together, so just what the timeline was to get it through the General Assembly. It went very quickly, actually. And at that point, there was county administration didn't play a role, and we did not have a plan for the facility. I think it was always Sheriff McCoy's long-term plan to do training, have some type of training facility, and as Member Williams just noted, to have some type of a live fire range as well. So,
Member Allison.
I know I had mentioned this to a couple of you, but at one point the National Guard was looking for property to do drops. Now I don't know with the radar tower there, if that makes it ineligible, but it's worth looking into whether it's something they can utilize.
that would be another option.
Member Rosenbaum.
I was just wondering if Administrator Sorrell, how good he was at watching goats and sheep, going out there and checking them morning and night. We could save $20,000 worth of mowing if we got our own herd, or we could rent it out to somebody else. But, is he smiling? Ooh, he's not smiling. He thinks I'm serious.
I'm smiling. Good. I didn't. I'm a townie. I didn't grow up on a farm, so getting into the farming business might be a little out of my lane. But if that's the policy decision of the board, we could figure out a way to make it happen.
That is something. I know we had somebody come in and talk to us. That would be something we could do, is to clean it up. The goats would take care of the brush, and the sheep would keep it down. I've talked to Mr. Harding again, and he's going to give me an estimate on what it would cost to spray the brush around, because we cut it down once and it keeps coming up through the fence. So he offered to spray it if the county were to pay for the chemicals, and Administrator Sorrell wanted kind of a bid what the chemicals would be, how much it would cost to do that, or if he kept it sprayed every year, we could keep in. Once we cut it down, it would be keep the fence rows clean. Other than that, if we give it back to the state, it will look 100 times worse than what it probably does now. And maybe there's something that we could do with it eventually. But the sheep goat idea may not be a bad thing if we could get somebody to rent it from us, and we didn't have to do any mowing out there. And it does have a good fence all the way around it.
Other comments from Member Salzer?
Because I was on the board at that time, and Bill Prather was our chairman. and he, of course, was very appreciative of Representative Leach, because Leach did what he had been asked, and he got that deeded over to us, and Bill put it in my committee at that time, because Bill split the committee up evenly with the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's why there were certain people that thought Bill was such a fair individual. Basically, what he told me was, we're just going to have to wait and see what people want to do with it. We did not have any plans that I knew of, other than, yes, Sheriff McCoy was very involved in it and so forth, but we, as the board, didn't know anything about it. And I remember the night that Mr. Leach came to our board meeting, granted us over. Everybody seemed to be very pleased with it, but we did not do anything with it. I did go out and tour it with another board member who has since passed away, and I think, Scott, we even had some files in some of those buildings out there with records and so forth. I don't know whether they've all been removed or not, but the buildings were deplorable, and I mean deplorable. I don't know, and Scott has said we only had one building for a while that was, one that we could use and so forth, but we don't have any buildings out there that we could use.
Member Williams.
Couple things. So with the FAA owning that property there, are there security issues?
Not to my knowledge. So we have a fence around our entire property and an access-controlled gate with the access road off of Route 116. The FAA has their own secured fence around their property with their own gate. They do have the punch code for our gate, so they can get to and from the property. When we acquired the property, the radar dome was actually occupied by FAA employees. I think there was at least one, maybe two. Today, they've made multiple upgrades. It's all automated, and there is no staff that permanently works out of the property. They only come to do routine maintenance on the radar dome.
So my thoughts are, again, going back to that conversation and visit with Sheriff McCoy and Lynn Pearson. I sort of feel like, again, if we gave it back to the state, I think it would just be in terrible condition, and we'd get a lot of complaints. But I have had complaints over the years from the shooting range that is down up above, below where the former Kroger's is in Madison Park. I've had quite a few complaints about the noise and such, right? It's actually sits just below a neighborhood. So for me, I would love to see a shooting range or training for, obviously that would be up to Sheriff Watkins, but I would love to see something along those lines there, where I think they have to book time in now at the one they're at, so this one would be available anytime that they would need it.
Member Salzer.
I just want to ask Scott. Scott, is there a water thing there, a water basin of some type connected with Hannah City?
Correct. So when Illinois American Water Company expanded their service area to include the village of Hannah City, the village and at that time Department of Corrections extended water out to our property, and that's the reason why there is the water plant for the property. So there used to be wells, but now it's where an Illinois American water line comes in to the property and is able to serve the entire 30. Well, if you include this village's property and the FAA property, it's a 40-acre quarter section.
I think if you look at the map too, since Hannah City does own a portion of this, any decisions that we would make in regards to this facility should be in concurrence with Hannah City. Hannah City's property, village line, actually goes across the street. I thought you said
correct. So this farm ground down here is all within the village of Hannah City. It's yet to be developed, but it's inside the corporate limits of the village.
Which with that 1,000, draw that line, other unless you're building a wood structure or a masonry structure, it's basically unbuildable in that lot. But I do think that this board needs to make some sort of, I know it's not, if we're gonna remain ownership of it, we have to have a strategy, whether it's even putting $100,000 a year, and it's gonna take us 10 years to demolish structures on there, to continue to have these safety hazards on there, is not good for anybody. So I don't know. I just want to get the wheels turning. I necessarily wasn't looking for an absolute policy decision to be made today, but I know, like Member Allison, she had a good idea. There's some other, if there's ideas to be had or explored, or does Hannah City want the whole front corner to make a park, or is there a way to keep the property maintained, minimize our costs, partner with somebody. We've been just sitting on this property for so long with no answers. I think we have to have some sort of answers in some sort of direction. Member Williams.
So playing off of what you just said, maybe there should be some discussions with Hannah City, because maybe there's some folks out there who would have some really great ideas. You know, they need to know what we can do with the property, what we can't do. But maybe there needs to be a discussion with their team out there to see what they have ideas for.
And I think that's what we sit down with Hannah City and move forward and see what they want. I know, did that change out of your district to Paul's district, or is that to Matt's district? Any other member family?
Has there been any requests from previous boards to look at possible state or federal funds that would allow for some remediation or demolition on that property?
No. I think Mr. Salzer put it most accurately. I think the sheriff might have had a plan, but there really was no plan by the county board when we took possession of the property, and there really hasn't been a plan since we took possession of the property.
My comments would be, I've driven past this property actually a lot the last month or so, and it is in bad shape. I would say I'm in favor of cleaning it up, but I do not believe that at this point in time we should get rid of it. We should continue conversations to see what can be done with it. And I don't want to call out the fact of a shooting range. I do think that's a creative idea, but property owners are concerned with the way it looks. I think we need to be thoughtful in how we move forward, because it looks like there's residential right next to that, and that might just not be a good fit, but it's definitely something I'd be willing to discuss.
So if hearing, member no.
I just wanted to ask if this really hasn't been on my radar too much, so if I could have a couple weeks just to kind of flush out a couple ideas that I'm starting to churn on, but not ready to put forth yet. But if I could just have a couple weeks to flush some stuff out, I would appreciate it.
No, I think that, so basically if you have any ideas, let's give it a month, and then we'll try to, at some point, we've been doing good in teams. I know that's Windish's district. I know that was Member Williams's at one time. Maybe if staff have a sit down with the village, get some of their direction and input, and it's just something I want to keep on our radar, move forward and have a long-term plan, and just not continue to kick the can and have these eyesores and have neighbors have to come every year and ask if when we're cutting grass.
If anybody wants to go walk around, let me know. We'll make arrangements to have you do that.
I actually would like to do that at some point.
Try and get me before budget meetings start, though.
Go at your own risk.
Any other questions, or we got some sort of little direction there? Public comment? So miscellaneous, I want to put this on everybody's radar so that hopefully maybe in August, I know we've had multiple conversations about this, but at the direction of the last meeting, or a few meetings ago, appreciate Member Ricker and Nate and staff. There's been some recent developments, not on ownership or leasing, but data that was given to the Election Commission, and if you have questions about that, please reach out to Member Ricker, myself, or Administrator Sorrell, or Ms. Gannon. She did share, or Manning had shared with that Chairman Manning some reports that they got back. Nate did go in, sit down with the owner, and has talked some lease terms. Kryling was going to be on site, or as being fixing the roof. So they are making some movement forward on that, but there are some terms. So we'd probably be looking to have that discussion in August, board meeting, executive session for terms, so that we, with the elections coming up, to have those discussions. I just want to put that on everybody's radar, in fairness, so that it's not thrown on at anybody. Steve, did I miss anything or anything to add? Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, not to belabor the length of the meeting anymore, but just to, for everyone's benefit, especially members of the Infrastructure Committee, and I've already talked to Chairman Salzer about this, between yesterday's committee meeting and today, Stark Excavating informed us that the sub-base underneath the jail ring road, at least the phase that we're doing right now, is insufficient and inadequate. It's going to require a change order. We've actually engaged Amy to give us the proper advice on the two choices Stark gave us. That change order is greater than my spending authority, and so we'll be asking the Infrastructure Committee to either have a special committee meeting or the verbiage that is in Section 19C of your Rules of Order that allows, with a consensus of the committee, an agenda item to be placed on the board's agenda without it actually being a formal committee meeting. We use a word that Jenny has an aversion to. We used to call it a poll vote, but that's what that means. And so if there's a general, very high level overview, and I can answer any questions you might have, but if there's a general consensus here, Stark wants to pour concrete this week. And so if there's a consensus of at least the committee members and of the rest of the board that this is likely to be approved at your August meeting, we'll advise Stark that they can proceed at their own risk, but they should go ahead and do so.
Member Daley.
Where is Mr. Eunice, our construction person, on this issue?
On this issue, we've put a question into him, but I haven't heard back from him yet.
Why are we in this position? I mean,
well, so it's conditions that once they removed the old pavement, and it was possible, but hoping against that, because in other areas where we've seen pavement out there, the sub-base is inadequate. It's what happened when they put the road in 30, 40 years ago. And so Stark gave us two choices. We talked to Amy, being the highway engineer, as to which option would be the preferred to have a longer life road once we put it back. And and that was to keep the subbase as it is, but put in a thicker depth of new concrete, and that's what is going to result in the change order.
Any other questions? All right, meeting adjourned.